Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Getting to the Bottom Line. I am your host, Stephanie Smith, owner of New Light Financial Solutions, where we offer outsourced CFO services to help business owners generate more cash in their business. And the goal of my podcast is to help put into perspective the various things that impact your business's revenue, profit, and cash flow. And I'm excited to have with me here today Donna Dube, who is the owner of CEO Amplify and also the host of the CEO Amplify podcast. So thank you for joining me today, Donna.
Thank you, Stephanie. So happy to be here.
I'm excited. So Donna is passionate about helping business owners work smarter, not harder, escape the hustle and grind culture, and go from stressed out to confident CEO. With several years of experience in project planning and strategic growth planning with 6 and 7-figure businesses, she has seen the momentum that can happen in a business when the CEO leverages their time, talent, and tactics. I'm so excited, Donna, because before we get started, I just want you to know we consult with our clients on the financial drivers that impact their revenue, profit, and cash flow. So these are the different things that you can leverage to increase your cash. And one of those is your operational costs, right? So I feel like what you do fits into that bucket really well of
Mm.
making sure you're efficient with your time and making sure you're not, I feel like one of the challenges is that we spend our time doing things we shouldn't be doing when we could be doing things that, I don't know, maybe revenue generating or things that we should be doing. So I'm
Yes.
excited to have a conversation about what you do and your opinions on, how we can optimize ourselves as business owners. So tell me a little bit about you and your business.
Yeah, thank you. So, yes, you're very true about the fact that we have to be measuring how we're using our time. And we'll get into that further today. But in terms of my business, I started in this online world in the project management space. And so came into businesses on the back end to help them manage a certain project, whether that was, a launch of a new product or writing a book or whatever that was. And while I enjoyed that side of things, I'm very much a planner, very strategic. I found that there were so many business owners drowning, if that's the right word, where on the front end things were looking great, but on the back end of their business, things were falling apart. They didn't have that solid foundation. And so as they started to grow, that operations, that back foundation became much more needed. And it got to a point where you just had to spend attention and time on it. And so that's when I kind of dove more into that operation space to really be able to help those business owners say, okay, here's what I've got now. How can I improve this foundation? How can I set up systems and processes to be more efficient, to have my team more autonomous, and at the end of the day, improve my bottom line?
That sounds amazing. Like we could all use more structure and processes. I know, and it's a constant thing. I'm constantly working on how do we optimize it or how do we even put it in place and write it down.
Yes,
Especially if you're
yes.
looking to grow and add team members, like you got to document stuff. And it's hard when you're busy as
It's
a
hard.
business
Yes.
owner.
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure. And then, a lot of the clients I work with, and your listeners are probably the same way, their minds are more on the visionary, more on the creative, being able to come up with good ideas, strategic ideas really quickly. But then the following through and implementing on those ideas is the harder part, right? Because they get an idea, oh, we're going to do this. I might tell the team about it. Team starts working next time. Oh, no, we're going to do this instead. They've got so many ideas. And so just being able to rein that in and say, what is really our vision and our mission for the next year, for the next 3 years, whatever that is? And does this project, does this idea really align with where we want to go? Because we'll find that some projects align really well. Great, let's find a time, make sure we have capacity to have the right team members to make this happen. And other projects don't align specifically with where we want to go. And so it's not that those projects have to be thrown out. I like to put them in what I call an idea parking lot. And so whether that's a Google Doc, whether that's in your project management tool, like the place doesn't matter, but to have a place where you can go and put those ideas when you have them and they don't 100% align with what you want to go. And then we have a process for checking in on that idea parking lot every 90 days so that those don't get forgotten, because maybe 90 days from now, one of those projects is relevant and we want to bring it forward.
I love that. First, I have two thoughts about this. First of all, I want to say I am subject to shiny object syndrome a lot. You can ask my husband. We run the business together, and I'm like, oh, I just saw this. Like, we need to go look into that. And I'm like, that's me. I do that a lot. So I love that you have a process in place for that. But I also love what you're doing in the process of keeping people on track, because that's what we do with our clients from the financial side is like, okay, what
Mhm.
lever are we looking to pull, and what steps do we need to get there? And let's make sure we stay on track, right? Because
Yes.
otherwise, easily distracted people just like me will be easily distracted.
Yeah.
So I love that you're doing that.
Yeah. And I'm sure you see it too on the financial side, but certainly as business owners, it's easy to implement a new strategy, roll with it for a little while, and not actually take the time to go back and measure its impact, right? Is this
Mm,
actually revenue generating for me? How much time is it taking for me and or my team? If it is revenue generating, is there a way we can make it more efficient? Or maybe it's a process that you and the team are struggling with. You haven't found a smooth way to make that happen and it's not revenue generating. Let's stop it.
yeah.
Right. But taking that time to go back and actually analyze, is this making a difference rather than just piling one strategy on top of another without knowing if they're really making a difference?
I also feel like I've worked in corporate for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen this a lot. Like, it's like, all right, we have this great idea and we're going to do it for like 6 months. Oh, and then it's like, I don't know if it's shiny object syndrome. It's like not quite working as well as you think it is. It's like, let's completely abandon ship and do
Mm,
something else. And it's like, did we ever figure out, like you're saying, did it work to begin with? Or should we have given it more time? Like, how do you help people measure of whether things are effective?
yes, yes, good question. Well, certainly time matters, right? And it's more time usually than we think. So for us, the business owner, if you imagine you've got the idea, then there's all the time, putting it into place and actually getting it out into the world. That time is not counted in terms of your return on investment. You can't start measuring that until you're actually doing the marketing, right? Whatever that looks like for you. So allowing a good 3 to 6 months to see that strategy roll out and take place. But many times we're counting maybe the 3 months that it took to get ready for it beforehand, right? And we cannot start until we've actually put it out into that world. So, letting it go that 3 to 6 months. Now, again, that depends on the strategy and it depends on what we're doing, right? Obviously, if you're putting money towards paid ads, you're not going to wait 3 or 6 months to see if that's working, right?
Yeah.
But, in general, we need to give that time.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Definitely makes sense. Yeah, I guess it's all pretty situational, just of what you're doing, which you
Mhm.
would want it to be. And and that makes sense too. So I'm curious, what I don't know if we should start with like what are the biggest mistakes you see people make in this area?
Yes. I would say from the business owner's perspective, couple mistakes. Most people who come to me are overworked and overwhelmed, right? So they have this dream, this idea to start the business in the first place. Obviously, most of us start as solopreneurs. We don't have anyone helping us. And we
Right.
are doing literally everything, right?
Mhm.
And where I see we fall into a trap is that once we grow a little bit, even if we bring on one team member that's part-time, 5, 10 hours a week, we have to then look at our job description and take out those things that we've now delegated to that team
Mm.
member, right? Every time we bring someone on, something else comes off our plate. And we may add something more strategic, more growth level tasks to our plate, but actually taking the time to look at our job description and say, okay, now how am I acting different? I hired Susie. She's going to work 5 hours a week for me. What am I doing in those 5 hours that I now have taken off my plate, right? Maybe you just need a rest, and that's fair. But if you're going to put something on your plate, what is it going to be? And is it strategic? And so a nice way I like to sort of help clients think about this is if you look at all the tasks in your business, they can fall into two buckets: maintenance and growth. And so maintenance tasks are those things like sending out your invoices, sorry, but doing your bookkeeping, it's doing your social media, right?
Mm.
Changing something on a landing page, setting up emails for a launch. All those things are more maintenance tasks. Do they have to happen? Definitely they have to happen. And most have to happen on some sort of regular occurrence. But the question is, do you as business owner have to do them?
Right.
Then those growth level tasks, that's where you're going to see that real return on investment. That's where you're going to see moving the needle forward. So those are things like your partnerships, getting in front of other audiences and teaching or sharing your knowledge, right? Podcast guesting, setting up new content for a program or service that you have, one-to-many sales, one-to-one sales calls if you're still doing those things. Those are things that you can't delegate to another team member unless you get quite big in terms of your size. And so as business owner, you want to be making sure that you're spending time each and every week on those growth level tasks. And what happens to many of us is we get pulled into those day-to-day maintenance tasks, and that starts to take up our day. At the end of the day, we say, oh, I didn't have time to do XYZ today, right? And if that thing you didn't have time for are those growth level tasks, then inevitably your business is going to be stuck. You're going to plateau. And so really flipping that script and saying, I want to start my day, at least do it at the beginning of the day if that works for you, but at least have time blocked off in your day for those growth level tasks so that you are continuing to work on those on a routine basis.
That makes sense. And I'm sure you've seen business owners struggle with, we talk about delegation, right? Like just handing stuff off, like, especially when you're that person starting out, like it's mine, it's my baby. You hear people talk about that. And
Yes.
just trying to bring someone else on to help is like, I can just do it faster if I do it by myself than take the
Mm-hmm.
time to teach you on how to do it. But I know that has to be a big struggle that you see with business owners that I'm sure once they overcome it is like, oh, now I do have more time.
Yes, yes, 100%. And there's a few areas here where I think we sometimes go wrong. Again, sometimes we wait too long. So we wait until we're over capacity, we're stressed out, we can't actually deliver on the promises that we've made to our clients. And we quickly put up an ad somewhere or ask a business bestie, I need a VA tomorrow. Who do you know? Right. And so that's not following best practices for hiring. And unfortunately, sometimes we get what we ask for in that situation. So being proactive and looking at, okay, I'm going to hire in the next 3 to 6 months. What's that going to look like? What kind of tasks can I have this person to do? Start making a running list, right? Look at the things you're doing weekly over and over that you may not enjoy doing and that are taking your time. And how could we group that together into a job description, right? It might not all fit into one. It might need two people, but just starting to work on that before you actually need the person makes a big difference. Being clear with your values when you're hiring. So having your company's values in that job description, talking about them when you do an interview so that you are attracting people with like-minded values and repelling those whose values may not match. And you may be thinking, okay, but I'm hiring someone to implement. Like I just need this person to do tasks. The values don't matter, but they so do matter because we can always teach someone how to use a piece of software, how to do a certain task. We can't teach them values. And so you'll hear people say, well, I hired and it just didn't work out. And 9 times out of 10, we haven't taken that time to make sure there's a match in values first, right? Because if that match is there, the friction can go away. And now we can actually deal with, okay, I want you to use this software or do this, or on Tuesdays has to go like that, whatever the details are. But sort of being proactive in that hiring process really makes a difference before you even get to the delegating. And then once you bring someone on, you have to keep in mind they can't read your mind, right? And so documenting as much as you can beforehand, even if it's doing a video while you do the process, right? It can be scrappy. It doesn't have to be a professional looking video. It's just you doing the process. So the person can see, oh, okay, we click there, we grab this, we do this. And then they can write a formal SOP from that video, but at least you've given them something to start with. And ensure that when you're giving them tasks, it's clear. So the task is clear, the deadline's clear, and the expectations. What does success look like, right? So then when they go to do it, they can be like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to match, and here's what I've produced. Yeah, it's pretty close. Let me send it to the business owner and, get some feedback, right? And then from the business owner's perspective, and this is a big one, believing that if I hire someone else to do it and it's 75 or 80% as good as I would have done it, we're golden, right? We're not looking for perfection. We're not, most of the situations we have in our online business world are not life and death, right?
What? No.
Yeah, like we make it bigger than it is, right? Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
they might have a wrong link one time, but guess what? So do you,
Yeah.
right? So we're all humans. Let's, let that guard down a little bit and appreciate the fact that, they've got it almost where you want it. Give some feedback and they're going to improve over time. So it's some extra work on your part at the beginning. But I like to say, it's short term pain for long term gain.
Yes. Yes. I feel like I have lots of comments, but um, I have a follow-up question, which I'll come back to first, but everything you're talking about makes me think about like, okay, so I'm married, my relationship with my husband. He doesn't just know what's in my head, right? And I think that communication in general is a challenge for all of us. We're not really taught to be really direct. So I love your advice of just you have to tell people what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And there should be no surprises. Being from my corporate background, it's always like if you go into a review, you should know if your review is going to be good or bad, right? Because
Right.
someone should set that expectation up for you in advance. Like I know I'm doing it well or I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm also a very direct person. So like just tell me what you want when you want it and I'll get it done.
Yes.
But I think that's important too, just to lay that foundation. I like that. But let me ask you a follow-up question.
Yeah.
When is the right time to hire that first person or second person? Like, how do people know? Because I feel like there's this challenge of, well, I don't have enough money. I can't
Mm-hmm.
afford it, but I really need somebody. So there's got to be this line in the sand that you're like, all right, I'm going to just take the leap and make the
Yeah.
investment.
Right. Yes. So I like to approach it from a couple of ways. One, looking at your capacity, right? So are there certain tasks that you're doing in your business each and every week? And because you're doing that, you don't have time for some of those growth level tasks. And so when you get to that point, what could you be offloading? And if there's enough that you could be offloading, even for, 2, 3 hours a week, again, doesn't have to be a full-time employee. You can start small. That's worth doing at the beginning. It also gives you some buffer room to be able to work with that person and get an idea of what you're going to have to do up front when you hire someone, right? So that's number one, is looking at your capacity. Number two, of course, is looking at your budget, right? And so I always suggest clients take a look at your budget and say, okay, if I hire this person at X amount per month, how much is that going to be? And do I have 3 months of their salary already banked? And you may say, oh, 3 months, that's a lot. I don't know your opinion on this, Stephanie, but the online world changes, right? Our revenue ebbs and flows. And so you want to make sure that you have that bank so that there's not pressure to have to go borrow money or to do something to be able to pay your new staff that you just brought on. So that gives you buffer room so that if revenue dips, right after you hire them, you still have some space there and you can pay them and feel ethically right about it, right?
Yeah.
So looking at your budget. And then number three is, okay, if I take that 5 hours off my plate, what can I do that's revenue generating? Because if you look at it that way, in a couple of months, you may be able to then bring on more revenue that's now paying for this person,
Right.
right? That
Yeah.
person is now up to speed. So the time you need to spend with them is less. They can now do work more autonomously. And you now have other revenue generating activities that you have time for each week to actually bring in that revenue and help pay for them. So again, it's like that short term period where I want to make sure I have a buffer, both for my time and my budget. But then, in 3 to 6 months, I have to see something different.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, I think it's good advice to have the buffer room there because you definitely don't want, especially if you're going to hire like a full-time person, right? You don't
Mm,
want to bring them on and you're paying them the salary and then it's like, oh, we just ran out of money. And a lot of people have problems, making payroll because they don't have good
yeah.
cash flow. So I think making sure you have all your financials in order makes perfect sense before you bring someone else on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious, your opinion, because we're talking about impacting your bottom line and everything. What kind of changes do you see or benefits do you see with people who are willing to get their processes in order, maybe
Mhm.
delegate tasks to other people and hire people to benefit their companies, right? And make that money, extra money in the long term. Have you seen any success stories with that?
Yes, for sure, for sure. So, excuse me, just in terms of clients, I'll give you a couple examples. I was working with a client who was a course creator and selling courses to young people newly out of university or college. And so she had a social media assistant on her team who was working at capacity for that person. She couldn't work any more hours. And the client was saying, we're selling courses to young people. Young people are on all the social media channels. I think I need to hire another social media assistant, but I don't have money for it. Right.
Right.
And so she asked me, what should I do? How do you think we should handle this? And so I said to her, I want to look at the data. I want to see your return on investment on the social media channels that you're posting on now. And to be honest with you, it was most of them, right? Trying to be everywhere. And we got in the back end of Google Analytics, and really surprising, there were actually two channels out of all the ones that she was working with that stood out. One for brand awareness, and one people were actually taking action, right? Clicking the link, signing up for things, whatever the action was on the post. And so the other channels were hardly getting any traction. So when you put it that way, you're like, okay, I'm paying someone to make all these posts and post on these channels and keep up with all of these algorithms, but actually I'm not getting a return on investment in there. And so we stopped posting like crazy on those others and doubled down on the two channels that worked. We now didn't have to hire someone else because the social media assistant had capacity to just focus on those two channels, right? Keep on top of what's changing, what's new, and have regular posts going out to those and let the other ones go. And so we didn't have to affect her budget. We didn't have to hire someone else. She felt more relief because she knew she was getting in front of her audience with objective data. She wasn't just thinking it, we had actual data. And to be honest with you, the social media assistant was less stressed too, because it was pushing her beyond what she was able to do. And so just really taking that step back and again, looking at the data and making an informed decision before jumping ahead and spending more, hiring more, trying a new thing really does make a difference.
Yeah, which obviously would save you money in the long run if you're going to hire someone else to invest in channels that aren't really working for you anyway, unless you, I guess, found someone to specialize in one of those channels, which could be a project for the future.
Yep.
But I love that you focus on the data, right? Like I am a very analytical person. I went
Mm-hmm.
to school for math. I love math.
Yep.
It's very, it is what it is, right? But
Yes.
to find the data to say like this worked or this doesn't work or it is working or isn't working, I think a lot of business owners struggle with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you just bring what is the ROI? You're like, I don't know, like Google
Yep.
Analytics, someone else handles that for me. I don't even look at it.
Yep.
I see that in the financial space too. Like, I don't really know what my numbers are.
Mm-hmm.
I P&L, what?
Yes.
I think
Yes.
there is this level of us as business owners have to get comfortable
Yep.
looking at the data and finding the data and being curious about whether or not it makes sense and something's
Mm-hmm.
actually working with proof. Like you would want that proof in other areas of your life.
Yep.
You should want that in
Yep.
your business too.
Yes, 100%. And I think you're right. Like people shy away from it and then we just guess what we think is happening, right? But I like to tell my clients the data are just numbers, they're just telling a story, right?
Right.
Let's make an informed decision from that story. So get curious, ask questions. Okay, well, we just made a new lead magnet. Is it converting? How many people are going to the page? Are they actually signing up for this new thing and getting on my email list? Right? Are they unsubscribing right after they get it because the rest of the information I'm talking about isn't in line with my new freebie, right? And so just really looking at those numbers, and again, it's you as business owner don't have to pull those numbers, but you have to give direction to someone to say, can you find for me how this landing page is converting? Can you find for me this piece of data, right? You gather those pieces of data, and then that's when you're strategic and make those informed decisions. So sort of looking at it from the higher level, you're putting on your CEO hat and
Right.
really thinking like a CEO.
Yeah, I love that. I think if you were a CEO of a large corporation, you're not going to just make decisions by the seat of your pants. Hopefully,
Yes.
I'd hope not. And it would be data. Like they would
Yes.
be asking for, let's look at the analytics, let's see the data. And I think it's hard sometimes because you don't know what to ask for, but
Mm-hmm.
I think part of that is finding the right person
Yeah.
to ask that question, or you have to learn, right? Owning a business is a lot about learning the things you don't know
Yes.
and
Yes. And
finding people that can help you get,
exactly.
do those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? You can start simple. So if you're in a position right now and you're like, well, I don't really look at the data, then let's start simple. You're
Right,
bringing new people into your world, however way you're marketing to get in front of new people. Is it working? Right? How many new people are getting on your email list or booking a call with you every month? Right? Is that working? Trend that out for, 3 to 6 months and let's see, is that working? And then once those people come into your world, you have to have a way of continuing the conversation with them, right? Of nurturing them. So, what
right,
is your strategy for that? Is it working?
right,
And then, of course, the big one, the revenue, right? So,
right.
we set revenue goals frequently at the beginning of the year or the end of the previous year. But then, how many business owners actually track that regularly?
I think little to none. Let me just say that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, we talk about I mentioned the drivers that we look at.
Yeah.
And one of the things I like to say is like everyone thinks that your financials is going to tell the whole story, or your P&L and your balance sheet. And they don't have those numbers. So some of the drivers that we look at on the revenue side are your number of leads, right? And your
Mm-hmm.
conversion rate. And your financial systems like QuickBooks is not going to tell you that. They don't tell you
Yes.
your leads. You have to go find that information somewhere else and write it down. So it is trying to find that bigger picture that
Mm-hmm.
isn't necessarily on a financial report. You have to do it on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one day there'll be a system that'll track all this stuff for you.
Yes.
Um, but you got to start somewhere. So I love that. You just write it down. Start with all the things you've got going on
Mm-hmm.
and see how people are learning about who you are.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Right. Many business owners say, oh, my website, I'm paying someone to do SEO. Great. That's not a bad thing. But then are you actually tracking, are people finding your website? Right. And what
right,
keywords are they using to find your website? Like that's useful information if you are working on SEO as a strategy.
right,
Yeah. So a simple spreadsheet doesn't have to be fancy.
right,
Right? Put the
right.
months and put,
Write
three
it
or
down on a
four
piece of
things.
paper.
Even that.
Right?
Yes, yes,
Who needs a
yes.
computer?
Exactly, exactly. But I would start with when you're asking yourself about your business, like, where am I trying to grow? Well, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that. And then let's measure those areas, right? Like you say, they're not on your P&L. And so you have to go into the software tools that you're using to find those numbers.
So true. I love that. Well, this has been such a great conversation. So I want to ask, what if someone listening today, what's the one takeaway you think they should get from this conversation, or one way to get started that would be
Mm.
most impactful for them?
Yes, yes. Okay. Well, I would say the one thing is looking at your time. And so we didn't spend a lot of time on this, but we touched on it. And it's really just leveraging your time as the business owner, as the CEO, whether you're a solopreneur or not, your time matters. And so being really intentional and purposeful with your time makes a world of difference. And for me and for a lot of my clients, that starting point is actually doing a time tracker. Yes,
Hmm.
I know I said it. It's painful. I get it. But you get so many golden nuggets from doing that and seeing how am I actually spending my time? And, thinking about it and flipping the script for many of us on how we're spending our time is the biggest transformation you can see.
I do. I love that idea of time tracking your own time just to see. I'm I'm the person that goes down the rabbit hole all the time. Like I came upstairs to work on this, and then I went down this rabbit hole and I didn't do that at all. And I did this other thing that was not
Hmm.
important at all. So
Yes.
I love that. I think that's a great tip. And I'm sure like calendar blocking falls into something of like making sure you're spending the right amount of time. Once you figure out what you're spending your time on, right? I'm
Yes.
not a calendar blocker. I feel like I should be.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people that do that. But your time is valuable, right? Time is money.
100%. Yes. Yes. And for many business owners, I remember working with a client and she was very creative and liked to get in the back end of Canva and make images and that type of thing. Right. But when we're actually looking at how she's using her time, she'd come to me and say, "Oh, I'm so busy. I'm overworked. I need to work less hours." Okay, good. But when we're looking at how much we're spending time, she could easily spend 2 or 3 hours a week in Canva. Oh, but I like it. I understand that. But what's your hourly rate that you would
Right.
charge a customer, right? Well, X
Yeah.
amount. Okay, now multiply that by the 2 or 3 hours that you're spending every week. How much in a month? Like you're not actually paying yourself this, but how much in a month would that cost you when you're doing those things rather
Right.
than doing those growth level tasks and having someone who you're paying at a lower rate and just as competent to make those images do it for you, right? So finding that balance.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard when it's something you love. But then you schedule that into if something you really want to work on, you schedule that into your time, making sure you're doing the other things that are more important, right?
Yes.
Um, awesome. Well, I think let's see, my takeaway, definitely measurement. I'm big on the numbers. You got to measure or you won't know if it's working or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you also need to measure to make better decisions, right? To see
Yes.
where you want to go in the future, to see if you've even met the goal. Do you have goals? Did you meet those goals, right? If you don't write it down or figure it out, like you would never know if you're on track to do the things you want to do, to even set new goals to grow if you weren't figuring out how you're doing to begin with. So
Yes.
measurement is such a big key. Well, this has been such a great conversation. If someone wanted to learn more about you or your business, where can they find you?
Yeah. So my website is ceoamplify.ca. And when they go there, there is a resource, a free resource they can download if they wish, which is called the CEO Power Hour Playbook.
Nice.
And it's really just helping you institute 1 hour each and every week in your business to really focus on where you're going. So you're reviewing, you're reflecting, and setting your top 3 priorities for the week. So there's a couple of exercises in there you can do. Yes, measurement is part of it. So you're looking at a couple of your metrics and then looking at your goals and saying, okay, what do I need to do to get one step closer to meeting that goal? That's what I'm doing this week and getting it in your calendar.
I love that. I'm going to go download it myself. And we could all use more organization and like process in our lives. So I love that. And anyone looking to find out more about me and my business, you can find us at www.newlightfs.com. That's our website. Sign up for our newsletter. You can also stay tuned for another episode of Getting to the Bottom Line. But that is it for this episode. So I just want to say thank you again so much for joining me, Donna.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you on the next episode. Bye.